I'm going to start with not so much a quote, but the conclusion of an astrophysicist by the name of Neil deGrasse Tyson, who happens to be an atheist. Not to say all scientists are atheists by any means, but he is. In addressing the question, does the universe have purpose, Dr. Tyson comes to the conclusion from looking at the creation of the universe, its existence, and the extinction events of life on Earth, that in fact the universe has no purpose or meaning. The universe has no purpose or meaning. Switch scientist to a geneticist, one of our favorite atheists, Richard Dawkins. DNA neither knows nor cares. DNA just is, and we dance to its music. So there we go. Two leading scientists saying, guess what? There is no purpose to the universe, and there is no meaning. How does it make you feel? Positive, negative, neutral? A little sad. That's okay.
Pity for them. I think
Pity.
they have a problem.
They have a problem. Pam is contentious. All right. Depressing. Okay. All right. Everything, now if I may imply, every answer that was given was a negative answer. There were no neutral answers. There were no positive answers. It was negative. Now, not to get the idea that just because we don't like this answer that it's wrong. That's not where I'm going. Here is the fundamental question I'm raising, is why do you even feel negative? Why do you even feel negative? And the answer is, quite obviously, is because you were wired for meaning. There's something in you, if you want to call it design, we call it whatever, but there's something in each of us as human beings. We look for meaning, and we must have meaning. Well, do we have to have meaning? There is a branch of psychology called suicidology. Guess what that's all about? And in this study, there's enough of this stuff that goes on that somebody had actually, I think, a really fascinating idea. They collected 721 suicide notes of people who actually went through with their suicide, looking for markers that they could distinguish between people who were just, maybe threatening or feeling, and those who actually would go through that, they were actually in that level of despair. What's more, in this article, it sampled people. These letters were from 13 years old to 96 years old. So we have a pretty good encompassment of humanity there. These are the things, if they were going to look for typical sentiments in these 700 plus letters, this is what they found were the sentiments. 1, I can't find my place in life. 2, this is best for all concerned. 3, I don't want to go, but there's nothing else I can do. I've never been much good. 4, I'm all twisted up inside. Every one of those notes deal with meaning. Every one of those notes, every one of those statements deals with some way trying to find and failing to find purpose and meaning in life. We literally will die without meaning, and yet the universe has no meaning. How do we find meaning? How do we define it? How do we experience meaning? We do it through story. We do it through story. Story is the way we kind of sculpt and manifest meaning in life. We're wired for story. If we're designed for meaning, we're wired for story. Even in suicide, kind of interesting, this article I was mentioning is that it ends in this poignant way. It ends with a narrative of a woman who is killing herself. And in fact, even as she finds no meaning, she has to put her story into her meaning or lack of meaning into story. And so this little excerpt goes like this. A divorced woman age 61 wrote, "You cops will want to know why I did it. Well, just let me say that I lived 61 years too many. People have always put obstacles in my way. I am not insane. My mind was never more clear. It's been a long day. The motor got so hot it would not run. So I just had to sit here and wait. The brakes, and that is brakes, E-A-K-S, not brakes as in car. The brakes were against me to the last. The sun is leaving the hill now, so hope nothing else happens. Even in the loss of meaning, she has to put it into story. Story is a big thing for us. So not surprising that the world, and to point it out, even Satan, has his story. Because meaning and story are melded together. They're so important. Now, we already looked at the story of the atheist scientist in the way that, well, their story is there is no story. There is no meaning. And we can see there's problems with that. However, there are other stories that go along. Let me just share a little bit. Perhaps some of you remember a writer and critic. She was quite famous in the 1950s, a lady named Mary McCarthy. A quote that probably you may very well have heard somewhere. We are the hero of our own story. Ever hear that anywhere? We are the hero of our own story. One of her peers in the 30s, 40s, 50s, a French writer and journalist by the name of Anne Nin. Now, she was kind of a woman before her times, because even back in the 30s, she was all about women's rights and place in society. She was very not known, very behind the scenes until around the 1960s, when the whole feminist movement became active, and she gained international notoriety. In one of her journals, and she just write what she felt and thought, she wrote this: "There is not one big cosmic meaning for all. There is only the meaning we each give to our life, an individual meaning, an individual plot, like an individual novel, a book for each person." Now we find that really society and even our entertainment has very much gone along that line. Think of any Disney movie you've seen in the last 20 years. There's so much of it's inspirational. It's all about follow your heart. If you're true to your heart, you're unfolding the story of your life. Don't let anyone else define you, that type of thing. Very much that idea that we are our own meaning. But do the stories hold up to reality? Do they hold up to reality? Is that how we find meaning? Well, let's consider this. For one thing, the meaning of life, if you are the meaning of your life, if you write the story, if that's the meaning, you know what? Your story's kind of small. Two, the meaning of life would become very disjointed, because even in here, well, if I'm my novel, and Rich is his novel, and Marilee's her novel, and I think that's the thriller, right, Marilee, if you write your novel? Yeah, okay. But not the black hole. But what happens if Marilee's novel is in conflict with my novel, or Rich's novel? It becomes very disjointed, doesn't it? So is the meaning of life disjointed like that? Or it's very temporary. James 4:13, it says this: "Come now, you who say tomorrow or today or tomorrow we will go to such and such a city, spend a year there, buy and sell and make a profit, whereas you do not know what will happen tomorrow. For what is your life?" Wow, there we are on meaning, right? "It is even a vapor that appears for a little time and then vanishes away." The idea, when you think of it, a vapor, a wisp of smoke. You ever get at a campfire and have the wind blow the wrong way? You know, that wisp of smoke is very intense. It's very real until the wind changes direction or you get up and move. Boy, your eyes are stinging. But it is so temporary. It's and it's gone. And that's what life is. As we look at all things, that's what any single life is the meaning of life that temporary? That it's just this wisp of smoke that goes by. It's awful short meaning. And if that's true, the meaning of life is totally unanchored too. What if life is simply following your heart? If you're true to your heart, you will find your meaning. Is that wrong? No, but we're saying that's the primary way to find it. How about this scripture if we consider it? The heart is deceitful above all things and desperately wicked. Who can know it? Jeremiah discovered something. That's Jeremiah 17:9, by the way. Jeremiah discovered something nearly 3,000 years ago, is, you got to be careful about your heart. If my heart determines the meaning of even just my life, well, okay, here's meaning, but you know what? I feel a little different by the end of today than the start of today. Has the meaning changed? Or over time, and I grow up a little bit, I see life different, and my heart changes on how it has the meaning of life changed. Is it that unanchored? Does it just free float like that? Boy, we're in trouble if it is, isn't it? Another great person of Scripture, the Apostle Paul, would describe it like this: then we would be children tossed to and fro and carried about by every wind of doctrine. That's what he told the people in Ephesus. Children, just tossed about, changing with the wind. Not much of a way to find meaning, is it? If meaning in life, as great as some of those sayings sound, if meaning in life is that small, lacks that much universality, is that temporary, is that unanchored and drifting, then you can be pretty sure there's very little hope of finding fulfillment in meaning. How can you? You're trying to hit this moving target, the story of meaning, the story of meaning. Richard Dawkins, going back to him for a little bit, would say, and he actually does say in one of his writings, no one with access to empirical facts can conclude there is real meaning. I would say, and I think intelligence or reason would say that if you look at the empirical facts, you can't help but conclude there is meaning. We're wired for it. We cannot live without it. How or why would a universe create something that needs something that does not exist? It just simply doesn't make sense. Story is meaning, meaning is story. So if we can look at the story of everything, we should come up with, or at least have insight to, the meaning of everything. If I want to know the meaning of me, I have to go to something bigger and greater than myself. If I want to know all creation, then I need to go to something even bigger and greater than all creation. Enter the gospel, enter the story. It's not surprising, too, that God also uses story to tell you meaning.